Benjamin, Miss Sumi Wo. Make many a to me young old dear shall would trim on our own kind. I had down we anybody. My phone was and crowd to me the chat.
Peace, health, and longevity. Welcome to another episode on African Health. My name is Caroline Onamia, and today I'm going to talk about hypertension, also known as high blood pressure. Did you know that worldwide, 1 in 4 men and 1 in 5 women suffer from hypertension? Did you also know that hypertension or high blood pressure is one of the most deadly causes of disease worldwide? And also one thing we also have to consider is that a lot of black people, the black race, have hypertension. This is due to our diet. This is due to our lifestyle. We may not exercise enough. We have a very high fat diet, high salt intake, but we're all going to talk about that at the end of the video, what we can do to prevent ourselves from getting this particular disorder or lower our pressure. But the numbers are very high. This is, like I said earlier, the statistics show that the hypertension is premature deaths. Hypertension is like number 1. So we have to be more aware on our lifestyle and what we can do. You know, you have heard it said that hypertension or high blood pressure is a silent killer. The reason for this is because it's what we call asymptomatic disorder. Basically a disorder that doesn't have symptoms, or the symptoms are not seen, they're not obvious. So you may not even know that you have high blood pressure. That is unless you go to your general practitioner, your doctor, for them to measure your blood pressure level. That's how dangerous it can be. And if you don't go and check if you have an elevated blood pressure level and you leave it like that untreated, it can lead to fatal cardiovascular diseases like stroke. That's why sometimes you hear a relative died from stroke or heart failure because they may not have treated their blood pressure level adequately enough to prevent themselves from getting those fatal cardiovascular diseases. So in this particular episode, I'm going to talk about what hypertension or high blood pressure is, the readings, so what is a normal range, what is a healthy range of blood pressure level. I'm going to talk to you about the risk factors, so who is at risk, what causes you to get the hypertension, and at the end I will talk to you about the solutions on how we can prevent ourselves from getting that particular disorder, or we can also find ways to lower our blood pressure level. So stay tuned and pay very close attention, as this is a very important lesson because a lot of Afrocentric people, black people worldwide, have this particular disorder and we don't even know it. So stay tuned. So now we're going to learn about what is hypertension. We hear it a lot, especially in the Ghanaian community. I'm Ghanaian myself, and most African parents, or specifically Ghanaian parents, but let us focus on African parents. Most African parents, most of the elders, they're suffering from what we call hypertension. Hypertension, elevated tension. Hyper means heightened or elevated, and tension means pressure. Another word is also high blood pressure. So if you ever hear the term hypertension or high blood pressure, they're synonymous, they're the same. So let us understand what high blood pressure or hypertension is. For those of you that are familiar in construction or building, there will come a point after you have laid the foundation, after you have raised the building to lintel level, after you have come to a point where you got the skeleton of the house, or even before that, you will reach a certain point where you go into the plumbing system. That is where you start to lay all of the pipes in the house that will be for the toilet, the bath, and all other parts that will require water. See the pipes as your blood vessels, your arteries, your veins. In the video that you will see that the veins, the arteries or the blood vessels are transporting particular nutrients, particular hormones, nutrients as I said, antibodies, and they're transporting all of these things in your blood with all of these compounds. They're transporting it to parts of your organs. So let's say your kidney needs a particular hormone, your heart needs a particular nutrient, or your brain needs a particular antibody. This is what these blood vessels do. It is a pipe. In that pipe is water. In our body is called blood. So as the water or the blood is carrying all of these nutrients, it brings it to our heart. In those particular parts, there's a particular pressure. What causes the pressure is in natural physics is a difference in pressure levels that causes a certain pressure in your body. I will not go into depth on the intricacies and the science of this phenomena, but what you should understand is that there's a particular pressure, blood pressure, going through your blood vessels. Blood pressure is not a bad thing. It is necessary. If there is no blood pressure, you won't be able to get the nutrients your body needs. Just like you have a truck driver. Let's say you ordered something online and there is someone, a deliverer, that will bring that particular parcel that you ordered to your destination. That is the same way you have to see it. Our heart pumps blood throughout our whole body. It pumps blood. In the blood will be nutrients, as I said, hormones, and all of these things. And it will give it to the organs that needs it. This happens through pressure, blood pressure. That's why I said blood pressure is not a bad thing. What is not good is when the blood pressure is elevated or when it is high. There shouldn't be too much pressure in the blood vessels or the arteries or the veins. As you have seen in the video, you have to see it like the pipes. If there's too much pressure in the pipes, certain things that can happen is that the pipes can burst, which is the case of stroke. What happens with stroke is that if you have, for instance, now actually not for instance, in reality, there is a particular artery or blood vessel that connects our heart to our brain, and it transports nutrients from our nutrients and oxygen from our heart to our brain. But what happens is when this particular vessel, blood vessel or artery bursts, this is what causes stroke. Because if there's a disconnect between our heart and our brain, if our heart is not able to bring enough oxygen and enough nutrients and enough hormones and enough antibodies to our brain will be deficient of these compounds, and it will eventually lead to death. This is what happens with stroke. When you have a stroke, a particular artery has burst. That is because there's too much pressure. See it as this: if there's too much pressure in this pipe will eventually burst and it won't be able to bring the nutrients to its destination. This is what happens with stroke. So the thing about high blood pressure, if our heart pumps blood with a heightened or elevated pressure for a longer period of time, it will weaken the arteries. It will cause the arteries to burst, like I said, and it will lead to stroke. It can also cause other malfunctionings in our body. Because like I said, our blood vessels is like the pipeline. It brings all of these nutrients to our organs. So it's very important that the pressure in those pipes or our blood vessel or arteries remains at a normal balanced level. If there's too much pressure, it weakens the arteries, but it can also weaken the heart, because the heart cannot always pump at a very high, cause a lot of energy to pump the blood all the time. At the end, at a given point, it will weaken the heart. The heart can only take so much. That's why you have people over a longer period of time, mostly in their 50s or in their 40s, they're suffering from a lot of cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular is actually our entire blood circulatory system, all of our veins, all of our blood vessels, arteries, our blood, anything that has to do with blood and the heart is the cardiovascular system. So what happens is that when the heart goes through a lot of strain and it has to exude a lot of energy to pump the blood through the body, it weakens eventually. And then you will get cases where elders die of stroke, of heart failure, of heart attacks, because the heart can't take that pressure any longer. So this is what happens when you get this is what happens if you don't control your blood pressure level. And the thing also, what I said in the introduction, is that hypertension is what we call asymptomatic. Right now as I'm standing, unless I go to a doctor for that doctor to basically measure my blood pressure level, I would not know if my blood pressure level is elevated or if it is low or if it is at a normal range. So it is my responsibility to do medical checkups at least every year, at least once a year, for me to see where I'm at with my blood pressure level, so that I may know if I get this particular disorder, I may adjust myself. I may change my lifestyle to lower my blood pressure level. So this is basically what high blood pressure is. I've explained to you that blood pressure is not bad, it's necessary, because that is what causes the nutrients and the oxygen and the hormones to be transported to all of our bodies. But a heightened or high blood pressure is not a good thing, because that will cause the arteries to burst eventually. That will cause the arteries to become weak. That will cause our heart to become weak over a longer period of time, because it cannot constantly be working hard and pushing and pushing and pushing because the arteries are, for instance, blocked or clogged, which I will go into in the next part. What causes our arteries to become clogged or blocked? What causes our arteries to be weakened? So I hope that you were able to pick up on what I was talking about, what high blood pressure is, what hypertension is. So it's very important that we are aware what it is. And once we know what it is, we may now understand what we can do about it. So in the next segment, I'll be talking about what is a normal range of blood pressure, what is an elevated range of blood pressure, so how it looks like, what number shows that you have high blood pressure, what number shows that you have a normal blood pressure level, and what number shows that you have a low blood pressure level. And in the last part, we're going to talk about what can be done to lower your blood pressure level or to even prevent yourself from getting blood pressure. So stay tuned. So now we are going into the readings of hypertension. So when you're going to visit your general practitioner or your doctor, you go for your appointments and then they will start to measure your blood pressure level. When your blood pressure level is being measured, two numbers will show. You have an upper number and you have a lower number. The upper number is called the systolic pressure and the lower number is called the diastolic pressure. The systolic pressure is caused when the heart contracts, but the diastolic pressure is the brief resting time of the heart. So when you hear a heartbeat, dit, 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 the resting between dit, dit is the diastolic pressure. So now that we understand the two numbers, you have a normal blood pressure level, you have an elevated blood pressure level, you have a hypertension level or high blood pressure level stage 1, hypertension or high blood pressure level stage 2, and then you have a critical, which is a very serious blood pressure level where you have to be rushed to the hospital immediately. So in the graphic you will see that a normal blood pressure level, the range is the higher number should be less than 120 and the lower number should be less than 80. So when you are going to the doctor and you measure your blood pressure and you have, let's say, 117 over 78, that means that you have a normal blood pressure level. So an elevated blood pressure level, as you will see in the graphic, is between, the higher number is between the 120 and 129, and the lower number is less than 80. High blood pressure stage 1. The systolic pressure is between the 130 to 139, or the diastolic pressure is between the 80 and 89. Stage 2 of the high blood pressure is when the higher number is higher than 140 and the lower number is 90 or higher, so higher than 90. And then they call this the hypertensive crisis. That is when your blood pressure level is so high you have to be rushed to the hospital immediately. That is when the systolic number, which is the higher number, is higher than 180 and the lower number is higher than 120. So in the graphic you can see the different ranges of the blood pressure level. So now we're going to go into the risk factors. Who is more at risk of getting hypertension? When we are talking about the risk factors, there are two types of risk factors. You have the modifiable risk factor, and you have the non-modifiable risk factor. The non-modifiable risk factor is your age, your gender, your race or your ethnicity, your family history, and your genetic disposition, so heredity. Then you have that is the non-modifiable risk factor. Then you have the modifiable risk factor, which is basically your lifestyle. How much alcohol you take in, your alcohol consumption, whether you smoke, whether you drink, whether you exercise, so your physical inactivity can cause you to have hypertension. You also have your salt intake and diets that are high in fats and trans fats. So the non-modifiable risk factors causes you to get hypertension. What we can understand about these two risk factors, just because your family members have hypertension, you have a hereditary trait of getting hypertension, but you make lifestyle changes to prevent yourself from getting hypertension, that is basically the solution. The non-modifiable risk factors don't weigh so strongly as the modifiable risk factors. The black race are known to have a high number of heart diseases, specifically high blood pressure. That is really, it has been researched, and this is what shows that the black race have a lot of heart diseases, cardiovascular diseases. The genetic history of black people also shows that they have high blood pressure. Having that in mind, it doesn't stop there. Just because you have the trait, just because you are part of the black race and you have a higher chance of getting hypertension, doesn't mean that you cannot do anything about it. The solution for you to not get hypertension or to lower your blood pressure level is to change the modifiable risk factors, which are your lifestyle. Basically change the way you eat, change the way you consume alcohol, change the way you are active. You know, I will get into that at the last part of the lesson on the things that we can do to prevent ourselves from getting hypertension. So it's very important that the message actually is that we should focus on changing the modifiable risk factors. That can cause us to basically eradicate high blood pressure to a normal range of blood pressure. So we have come to the last part of the lesson, and the last part, now I'm going to talk to you about steps we can take to prevent ourselves from getting hypertension and to lower our blood pressure level. So for those that are already high blood pressure patients, what can you do to lower your blood pressure level? Which foods can you eat to lower your blood pressure level? There are 15 types of food that you can eat to lower your blood pressure level. The first one is blueberry, banana, beets, kiwi, watermelon, dark chocolate, leafy green vegetables, oats, garlic, pomegranates, cinnamon, and pistachios. So these are the foods that you can consume to lower your blood pressure level. Another thing that we also have to keep in mind, to lower our blood pressure level, we have to change certain parts of our lifestyle. For those that like to drink a lot, reduce your alcohol consumption to 1 drink a day for the ladies and 2 drinks a day for the men. For those that have hypertension, eat 1 gram of salt every day. It is recommended for those that don't have hypertension to consume 6 grams of salt a day, but for those that have hypertension, try to consume 1 gram of salt a day. In order to monitor it, you can check the ingredients. Let's say you're buying a loaf of bread, you can check the ingredients to see how much salt is in the bread, how much salt is in a particular product that you're buying. So monitor your salt intake, reduce it, because salt really increases your blood pressure level, because salt is known to hold water. And when salt holds water, water will be in your blood vessels, and that can cause the pressure in your blood vessels to increase, and thereby it can lead to a higher pressure in your blood, basically high blood pressure. Drink less alcohol. Try to reduce it to 1 drink a day, one drink a day or 2 drinks a day for the men. Exercise regularly. That improves your cardiovascular system. That improves the blood flow throughout your entire body. It is recommended that you exercise at least 2.5 hours per week. So if we have Monday to Friday, 30 minutes from Monday to Friday, you can take a walk, you can take a jog, you can do something physical, a physical exercise that can make your heart beat a little faster, because that really it improves the cardiovascular system. So that is what is recommended, that you exercise at least 2.5 hours a week. Also, eat foods that have low fats and low trans fats. For the African community, we like to fry our foods a lot, and that is not really good. If we fry our foods a lot, our cholesterol level will go up. It can lead to diabetes. It can lead to obesity. So when you are cooking your foods, try to avoid frying your foods. And if you want to fry your foods, fry it in healthy oils, like coconut oil is a very good oil you can fry your foods in. So, and grapeseed oil, but try to avoid sunflower seed oil, palm oil to fry your foods in, because these oils at a certain temperature, they can be transformed into trans fats, and those trans fats causes these cardiovascular diseases, one of them being hypertension. So these are the things that we can do to prevent ourselves from getting hypertension. Doing this consistently over a longer period of time will show a great improvement in your blood pressure level. And also something very important, contact your doctor for regular checkups to see how your blood pressure level is going, to see if you are still in the normal range, or if your blood pressure level is elevated, or if it is not, or if it is in a critical situation. Because like I said in the beginning of the lesson, hypertension is what we call asymptomatic. You don't really see the symptoms, they're not apparent. So you have to go to your doctor to see if you have it or not. So that is what we really have to take into consideration. So these are the things, like I said, we can do to prevent ourselves from getting hypertension. I hope that you have learned enough in this lesson on hypertension, on what it is, what causes it, what diseases come with hypertension if you don't treat it, what we can do about it. So I hope you have learned enough, and I will see you in the next lesson. Let food be your medicine, and let medicine be your food, and health truly is the only resource that you have and that you need in order to live in this physical realm. The herbs are for the healing of the nations, as the scripture says, and consume of every fruit and herb-bearing tree. To you it shall be for meat, as God has commanded us in the scriptures. Peace, health, and longevity. Thank you.